The CEO fired the single mom intern in front of everyone for falling asleep at her desk. Just another careless intern, nothing more. What he didn't know, she had been awake for 48 hours straight, quietly holding back a cyber breach big enough to bring his entire company down. And he had just sent his only chance of stopping it out the door. Mia Carter's head rested on a stack of printed code, her brown hair falling across the keyboard. Around her, 6 monitors glowed in the dark corner of the executive floor. Red alerts blinked on 3 of them. A half-eaten granola bar sat near her hand. 11 empty coffee cups formed a crooked circle around her chair. She had not slept in 48 hours. On the top floor of ValeGuard Cybersecurity, the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Ethan Vale stepped out, his black coat still wet from the rain. His jaw was tight. His phone was pressed against his ear. "I don't care what they're saying," he snapped at his chief of staff. "Tell the investors I'll handle it personally. If even one of them pulls funding today, this entire floor gets cleaned out by Friday." He ended the call and shoved the phone into his pocket. It was 7:42 a.m. The sun had barely climbed over the Manhattan skyline. The newsfeed on his tablet was already screaming about a leaked memo claiming ValeGuard had ignored security warnings from 3 major banking clients. $2 billion in contracts were trembling on the edge of a cliff. Ethan walked through the executive floor with the speed of a man chasing a fire. Senior employees, already at their desks, straightened the moment they saw him. Phones went silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. He passed the analytics pod, the security lab, the conference room where lawyers had been fighting through the night. Then he stopped. In the corner, near the back of the floor, he saw her, the intern, asleep. For a full second, Ethan didn't move. He just stared at the messy desk, the empty cups, the flashing screens. A young woman, late 20s, slumped over a keyboard like she had collapsed mid-sentence. Something inside him snapped. "You," he said, loud enough that the whole floor heard him. "Wake up!" Mia stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused, then sharp as soon as her brain caught up. She lifted her head and saw him standing over her. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "On your feet," Ethan said. By now, 12 senior staff members had gathered around. The head of security, the chief technology officer, 2 department directors. They watched in silence. Mia stood up. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were shaking, but she held on to the edge of the desk to hide it. "Sir, Save it," Ethan cut her off. "Do you have any idea what is about to walk into this building this morning?" "Yes, sir, but I need to—" "Federal regulators, banking clients, investors who pay the salary of every person standing here. And I find an intern sleeping like she's on a beach in Florida?" A small laugh escaped from somewhere in the crowd. Mia's cheeks burned. "Mr. Vale, please listen to me," she said, her voice steady even though her chest was tight. "There has been an active intrusion since Saturday night. I traced the entry point through the secondary firewall. I had to isolate it manually because the automated systems were—" "Manually?" Ethan's voice grew louder. "You touched our protocols manually? Without authorization from anyone?" "There wasn't time to—" "Get her out." 2 security guards stepped forward. The head of HR appeared with a tablet, already scrolling through termination paperwork. "Sir, please." Mia's voice cracked for the first time. "Just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes at the screen and I will show you what is happening. The attack has not stopped. It has only been held back. If anyone reboots anything on this floor, it will—" "You are done here, Miss Carter," Ethan said. "Reckless, incompetent, sleeping on duty during the worst week this company has ever faced. Your badge. Now." She slowly unclipped the lanyard from her shirt. Her name printed on the badge looked smaller than usual. Her hand trembled as she placed it on the desk. The guards walked her toward the elevator. Heads turned. Phones came up to record. Someone whispered something cruel that she pretended not to hear. Mia did not cry. She did not speak. She kept her eyes forward and her chin up because the only thing she had left in that building was her dignity. Just before she stepped into the elevator, she glanced back at her abandoned monitors one last time. What she saw made her stomach drop. The far right screen, the one she had set up to watch encrypted traffic on the secondary firewall, had a thin red line moving across it. Slow, quiet, almost invisible. That line had not been there when she closed her eyes. It meant only one thing. The intrusion she had been holding back for 48 hours had just slipped its leash. The attackers were back inside the system. And now there was nobody left at that desk who knew how to stop them. The elevator doors closed in front of her face. As the floor numbers began counting down, Mia pressed her shaking hand against her mouth and whispered the only thing she could think of. They have no idea what's about to happen. By 11:14 a.m., the first phone call hit Veilguard's main switchboard. It came from First Meridian Bank in New Jersey. A junior officer was almost crying into the phone. $300 million had moved out of corporate accounts in the last 20 minutes. Nobody had authorized any of it. Nobody could stop it either. By 11:32 a.m., a second bank called, then a third, then a credit union in Ohio, then a wealth management firm in Boston. The lines lit up faster than the operators could pick them up. On the executive floor, Ethan Vale stood at the head of a conference table watching a wall of screens turn red one by one. Each red square was a client. Each client was leaking money. "Talk to me," he said. "Somebody talk to me." His chief technology officer, David Greer, had not blinked in 10 minutes. Sweat had soaked through the back of his shirt. "Sir, the malware is doing things we have never seen before. Every time we try to trace it, the file structure changes. It is like chasing smoke." "Then catch the smoke." "Sir, it is not running through any of our standard channels. Half of it is sitting outside the automated detection grid completely. It is like somebody pulled the worst part off the main network and locked it inside a separate cage." Ethan turned slowly. "A cage?" "Yes, sir, a manual cage, built by hand." The room went quiet. Every person at that table understood what David had just said. Somebody had built a containment wall around the worst part of the attack, and that wall was the only reason the entire banking system had not collapsed already. That somebody had been escorted out of the building 3 hours ago. Ethan turned to his head of security. "Find Mia Carter. I do not care where she is. Find her." "Sir, she was terminated this morning. Legally, we cannot find her." In Brooklyn, Mia climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment, one slow step at a time. Her body felt like it was made of wet sand. The cardboard box from her desk was tucked under her arm. Inside it sat a small framed photo of Noah, a half-empty bottle of cough syrup, and a handwritten note from her son that read, "Mom, you are the best. Love, Noah." She unlocked her door and stepped inside. The apartment was small. The radiator made a hissing sound she had stopped hearing years ago. A pile of unopened bills sat on the kitchen counter. The top one had a red border around it. She set the box down on the floor and just stood there. For the first time since Saturday night, there was nothing to fix. No firewall to rebuild, no code to chase. Only silence and a stack of bills she could no longer pay. A soft knock came at the door. She opened it and saw Mrs. Alvarez from the apartment next door, holding Noah's hand. Noah's small face lit up the moment he saw his mother. He let go of Mrs. Alvarez and ran into Mia's arms.
"Mom, you came home early!"
Mia held him tight. She did not trust her voice yet, so she said nothing.
"Did you eat anything today, mija?"
Mrs. Alvarez asked softly.
"I made pozole. I will bring some over."
"Thank you," Mia managed. "Thank you for taking him." Mrs. Alvarez looked at her face for a long second, then nodded and walked away without asking the question that was sitting on her tongue. Noah pulled back and looked up at his mother.
"Are you sick? Your eyes look funny."
"Just tired, baby, that is all."
"Did you finish your big project?"
She brushed his hair back. Almost finished." Noah grinned and ran to his small corner of the living room where his action figures were lined up in a careful row. He had asthma. The doctor's last visit had cost her almost half a paycheck. The inhaler on the counter was nearly empty. She had been planning to refill it on Friday with her next paycheck. There would be no Friday paycheck now. Mia sat down on the couch. She closed her eyes. She told herself she was going to sleep for 10 hours, and then she was going to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. Her personal laptop, sitting on the coffee table, made a quiet sound. A short beep, then another. She opened one eye. The screen was dark. She had not used it in 2 days. The third beep came. She sat up. Before leaving Vale Guard on Saturday, Mia had set up a private mirror on her own machine, a small window into the secondary firewall. Nothing that broke any rules, just a copy of the alert feed she had been watching from her desk. She had done it because she did not trust the automated systems to wake her up if something changed. Right now, the screen was filling up with alerts. She opened the laptop. Lines of code rolled past her eyes. Her tired brain took a moment to catch up, and then the breath stopped in her chest. The attackers were not just inside Vale Guard's banking client systems anymore. They were moving sideways. She watched a packet trace bounce from a Vale Guard banking client in New York to a clearinghouse in Virginia, then to a second clearinghouse in Chicago, then to a payment routing center she recognized from her old job. Mia leaned closer. That last server did not belong to any private bank. That server was part of the national payment infrastructure. The pipes that carried every wire transfer, every direct deposit, every credit card transaction in the country. The hackers were not chasing a few $100 million in client money. They were climbing toward the spine of the American financial system. Mia stood up. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it was not from exhaustion. In the next room, Noah coughed once, a small, dry cough. He picked up his inhaler and shook it. The sound it made was hollow. Mia looked at her son. Then she looked at the screen. Whoever was doing this had timed it to the minute. They had waited for someone like her to be removed from the floor. They had waited for the senior staff to be confused. They had picked their window with care. A new thought stopped her cold. They had picked it the moment she fell asleep. That meant somebody inside Vale Guard had told them when she went down. Mia sat back at the laptop and pulled it onto her lap. "I am sorry, baby," she whispered toward the living room. "Mom is not done yet." Tuesday morning came with sirens. By 6 a.m., 3 black SUVs from Homeland Security were parked along the curb of Vale Guard's Manhattan Tower. By 6:15 a.m., the lobby was full of federal agents in dark suits showing badges to the front desk. By 6:30 a.m., the media trucks arrived. Ethan Vale stood at the window of his glass office on the 40th floor and watched the camera lights snap on one by one. Reporters were already shouting questions through the front doors of his own building. A breaking news headline scrolled across the muted television behind him. "Vale Guard at the center of nationwide banking crisis. Is your money safe?" He had not slept. His shirt from Monday was still on his back, wrinkled and stained at the collar. The investors had stopped calling him by his first name. They were calling their lawyers instead. The door opened. David Greer walked in carrying a thick stack of printouts. His eyes were red. "Sir, you need to see something." "Tell me you have good news." "I have the opposite of good news." David placed the stack on the desk. "These are the access logs from the secondary firewall. From Friday night to Monday morning, every login, every command, every change made to the system." Ethan picked up the first sheet. His eyes ran down the column of names. Carter, 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 Carter. He flipped to the next page. Carter, Carter, Carter. The same name appeared on every line. Logged in for 19 hours. Logged out for 40 minutes. Logged back in again. Manual command after manual command. Hand-built blocks. Custom traffic filters. 3 full intrusion attempts caught and shut down between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. 2 more on Sunday night. Ethan flipped through the pages slowly. His face was changing. "Where was the senior team during all of this?" he asked quietly. David did not answer right away. "Sir, most of them were on the leadership retreat in the Hamptons, the one you approved last month." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. "Tell me she had support. Tell me somebody was helping her." There were 2 junior analysts on call, both of them logged out by midnight on Saturday. After that, sir, it was just her. Ethan sat down slowly in his chair. "There is more," David said. He placed a second folder on the desk. This one was thinner. The cover sheet had a date stamp from 6 weeks earlier. "She filed this report on the 18th of last month. She filed a second one the week after, and a third one the week after that." Ethan opened the folder. The document was titled in plain black letters, "Urgent. Architectural vulnerabilities in secondary firewall. Recommendations for immediate replacement." It was 21 pages long. Charts, diagrams, predicted attack vectors. Each diagram came with a note about how the existing system was almost 10 years old and had been patched too many times to count. Ethan turned to the last page. There was a routing trail across the bottom, showing who had received the report. His chief technology officer, his chief operating officer, his head of risk. Each one had marked the same response next to their name. Not urgent. Intern input. Archive. Ethan sat very still for a long time. He thought about Monday morning. The way her hands had shaken on the desk while she tried to explain. The way her voice had not broken until the very end. The way he had cut her off before she could finish a single sentence. He picked up his phone. He searched for her name in the company directory and pressed call. It rang 4 times. It went to a voicemail with a tired voice that sounded younger than the woman he had fired. "This is Mia. Please leave a message." "Miss Carter, this is Ethan Vale. I owe you a conversation. Please call me back." He ended the call and stared at the screen. He called again. Voicemail. He called a 3rd time, a 4th, a 5th. He sent a text message asking her to come back to the building. He sent a 2nd one offering to send a car. He sent a 3rd one with the words, "I was wrong." Nothing came back. In Brooklyn, Mia's phone sat face down on the kitchen counter. She had seen the first call. She had seen the name on the screen. She had turned the phone over and gone back to her laptop. Noah was at the small table behind her, eating cereal and drawing dinosaurs on the back of an old envelope. "Mom, who keeps calling?" he asked. "Nobody important, sweetheart. Are you working again?" "Just a little." "You said you were almost finished." She turned and looked at him. His small forehead was wrinkled with worry far bigger than any 8-year-old should carry. She walked over and kissed the top of his head. "I will be finished soon, I promise." She did not know if she was lying. Back at Veilguard, the war room had filled up with federal agents. A woman with a Homeland Security badge clipped to her jacket walked up to Ethan and handed him a tablet. "Mr. Vale, you need to see this. It went out 3 minutes ago." Ethan looked at the screen. A video had been uploaded to a hidden corner of the dark web and mirrored to 3 open news sites. It showed a black background with white text scrolling slowly upward. A computer voice was reading the words out loud. "To the people of the United States, Veilguard cybersecurity has failed you. Their leadership has known for months that their systems were broken. We are now in control of millions of banking records, payroll files, and federal payment routes. You have 48 hours to deliver $600 million in cryptocurrency to the address below. If the deadline passes, every record we hold will be destroyed. Wages will not be paid. Pensions will be erased. Mortgages will be lost. The clock is already running." The video ended. The room went silent. Ethan looked at the federal agent. His mouth was dry. 48 hours, she said, from the moment that video posted. He looked at his phone. Mia had still not called back. Across the river in Brooklyn, Mia closed her laptop and stood up. She had just seen the same video on the news ticker at the bottom of her screen. A new thought hit her, sharp and cold. $600 million was not the real prize. The ransom was a smokescreen. Whoever these people were, they were planning to destroy those records, no matter what was paid. And the only person in America who knew that was a fired intern standing in a Brooklyn kitchen, watching her son shake an empty inhaler. By 9:47 p.m. Tuesday night, Ethan Vale was sitting in the back of a black town car on the Brooklyn Bridge, watching the city lights move past the window. He had not been to Brooklyn in over a year. He had not driven himself anywhere in 5. The address on his phone was a 4-story walk-up near Atlantic Avenue. The car pulled up at 10:03 p.m. The street was quiet. A small bodega on the corner had a flickering yellow sign. A garbage truck rumbled past. 2 teenagers on a front stoop glanced at the polished town car and went back to their phones. Ethan stepped out alone. He had told the agents to stay behind. He climbed the 4 flights of stairs in his expensive coat and stopped at apartment 4B. He stood there for almost a minute before he knocked. The door opened a crack. The chain was still on. One eye looked out at him. "You should not be here," Mia said. "I know." "How did you get this address?" "From the company file." "Which you should not have access to outside of working hours." "I am aware." She did not close the door. She did not open it either. "Mia, I am not asking you to come back. I am asking you to give me 5 minutes." "That is what I asked you yesterday morning." The words landed harder than he expected. He looked down at his shoes. "Yes," he said. "You did." She watched him for a long moment. Then she undid the chain and stepped aside. He walked in. The apartment was smaller than he had imagined. The kitchen and living room were the same room. A 2-burner stove sat next to a refrigerator covered in dinosaur magnets. The couch was patched with a folded blanket. The coffee table was bare pine. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, even though the holiday had passed 3 weeks ago. On the kitchen counter sat the stack of bills, a red envelope from Con Edison, a second envelope from a children's hospital in Manhattan, a third from a pharmacy with a balance owed. A small framed photo on a side table showed a young man in an army t-shirt holding a baby. Beside it sat a folded American flag in a triangular wooden case. Ethan understood without being told. "My husband," Mia said quietly behind him. "Daniel.
killed by a drunk driver 4 years ago. Noah was 4.
She walked past him and turned on a small lamp. The room got softer. A boy was sleeping on a fold-out cot near the radiator, his small chest rising and falling with a faint wheeze. An inhaler lay next to his pillow. Ethan looked at the boy, then at the stack of bills, then at the woman he had fired in front of 12 people the day before.
"Sit down, Mr. Vale."
He sat at the small table. She poured him a cup of black coffee from a pot on the stove. She did not ask if he wanted milk. "Before you say anything," she said, "you should know who you fired yesterday." "I am starting to figure that out." "You have no idea." She sat across from him, her hands wrapped around her own mug. "I worked at Hayward Federal for 6 years, government contractor in Virginia. I was a senior threat analyst. I led red team operations on 3 classified projects. I have a clearance most of your senior staff would not qualify for." Ethan swallowed. "Why did you leave?" "Because Daniel died at 2:14 in the morning on the Beltway, and Noah woke up the next day without a father. I had a job that flew me to 4 cities a month. My parents had passed years before. I had nobody in this country except a 4-year-old boy. So I quit. I sold our house. I moved here to be near Daniel's sister, who passed away last winter." She paused. 3 years went by. I tried to come back. I sent out 46 applications. 42 of them were ignored. The 4 that interviewed me asked the same question: "Why did you take so many years off?" When I told them, the smiles got smaller. They said I had lost my edge. The field had moved on. I was overqualified for entry level and unqualified for everything else. She took a sip. "Your company was the only one that offered me a paid internship, $42,000 a year before tax. I took it because I could not afford to wait any longer." Ethan stared into his cup. "Mia, I came here to ask you something. The federal team needs you. The country needs you. I will pay you whatever you want. I will give you a department. I will make a public apology on every channel that will carry me." She set her cup down. "No, Mia, you stood there and called me reckless. You called me incompetent. You let 12 people watch and a security guard walk me out. Do you know who saw that video by Monday afternoon? My old colleagues at Hayward, my son's teacher, the lady at the corner store, my landlord who asked me for next month's rent in cash this morning." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "I can stop your hackers, Mr. Vale. I am probably the only person in this city who can, but I am not going to do it for you. I am not going to do it for your investors, and I am not going to do it for the men who sat in those leather chairs and stamped my reports as not urgent." Ethan opened his mouth. He closed it again. He stood up slowly. "I understand." He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. "For what it is worth, I am sorry. I should have listened. I should have read the reports. I should have asked your name a long time ago." She did not answer. He left. When he stepped onto the sidewalk, the cold air hit his face. His town car was waiting at the curb. Across the street, parked in the shadows under a broken street lamp, sat a black sedan he did not recognize. 2 men were inside. Neither of them moved. A second sedan was parked at the far corner. Ethan slowed his pace. He climbed into his town car and quietly told the driver to stay where he was. He pulled out his phone. Upstairs, in apartment 4B, Mia leaned against her door and closed her eyes. A small sound came from behind her. She opened them. Her laptop, sitting on the coffee table, was beeping again. The cursor on the screen was moving by itself. Somebody, somewhere far from Brooklyn,
was already inside her machine. And down on the street, the two men in the black sedan opened their doors at the same time. Mia closed the laptop the second she saw the cursor move. She did not panic. Panic was a luxury she had forgotten how to afford.
She unplugged the machine, popped the battery out, and dropped both pieces into the freezer. Then she walked to the window and lifted one slat of the blind by half an inch. Two men were crossing the street. They were wearing dark coats and walking with the calm rhythm of people who knew exactly where they were going. Behind her, Noah coughed in his sleep. She moved fast. She grabbed the duffel bag she kept under the kitchen sink, the one Daniel had taught her to keep packed at all times. Inside it sat passports, 2 changes of clothes for each of them, Noah's medical file, a backup inhaler, $3,000 in 20s, and a small pistol she had not touched in 4 years. She knelt by the cot and shook her son gently. "Noah, wake up, baby. We have to go." "Mom?" "Shoes on, no questions, now." She did not turn on the lights. She did not pack anything else. She picked up Noah, his small body still warm with sleep, and carried him toward the back of the apartment. The fire escape outside the bedroom window squeaked as she pushed it open. Down on the street, Ethan Vale was still sitting in his town car. He had been on his phone for 90 seconds. He had given the dispatcher the apartment number, the description of the two men, and the name of the woman upstairs. Federal cars were already moving. He looked up. The two men had reached the stoop of the building. One of them tested the front door. It was locked. The other reached into his coat. Ethan opened his car door. "Stay inside, sir," his security agent said. "Get out and cover the back of the building." "Sir, now!" The agent ran. By the time the first federal SUV turned the corner with its lights off, Mia was already on the second-floor landing of the fire escape, holding Noah against her shoulder. The metal was cold and slick under her bare hands. Noah did not cry. He had inherited his mother's nerves. 2 minutes later, Ethan's security agent met her in the alley. Mia did not ask questions. She handed Noah to him so she could climb down faster. By 11:42 p.m., she was in the back of a black SUV moving across the Goethals Bridge toward New Jersey. Noah was in her lap, half asleep, his fist closed around her thumb. Ethan was sitting across from her in the rear seat. He was not speaking. Neither was she. The two men in the dark coats were already in federal custody by midnight. They would not say a single word. The safe house was in Edison, New Jersey, set back from the road behind a tall iron fence. From the outside, it looked like a tired suburban office building. Inside, it was a clean, fluorescent-lit operations floor with 12 workstations, a kitchenette, and 3 small bedrooms behind a steel door. Noah was tucked into the smallest bedroom by 1:30 a.m. with a fresh inhaler in his hand and a federal medic at his bedside. Mia kissed his forehead and stepped out. Ethan was waiting in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee. The Homeland Security agent from Tuesday morning was sitting at the table with her tablet open. Her name was Agent Diane Halsey. "Miss Carter," Halsey said, "I need to be direct with you. The men outside your apartment were not hired locally. We pulled their phones. They were paid through a chain of shell accounts that lead back to a syndicate we have been tracking for 2 years out of Eastern Europe. This is not a small group of criminals. This is an organized cybercrime network with state contacts." Mia nodded once. She had already guessed. "There is something else," Ethan said quietly. He set a thin folder on the table. "My internal audit team finished a review 4 hours ago. One of my senior executives, Richard Sloan, made a series of unauthorized infrastructure changes 8 months ago. He bypassed 3 security review boards. He moved our backup operations to a cheaper facility in Chicago. He cut the monitoring contract on the secondary firewall by 62%. He approved everything by forging other signatures." Mia opened the folder. Her eyes moved down the page. He did this to inflate quarterly numbers, Ethan said. His bonus structure was tied to operating margin. He put a hole in the wall and pocketed the difference. And the hackers found the hole, Mia said. They did. Or somebody told them where to look. Ethan went still. So did Halsey. That is what I was going to ask you next, Halsey said. Mia stood up and walked over to the workstation farthest from the door. She sat down. The federal team had already pulled the malware files from Veilguard's quarantined servers. She opened the first one, then the second, then the third. Ethan and Halsey watched her in silence for almost 20 minutes. She did not type. She just read. Then she leaned back. This is bigger than Veilguard. She turned the screen so they could see. Look at the routing tables buried inside the second payload. These addresses do not point at private banks. They point at the Fedwire network, the actual federal payment system. The hackers are not interested in our clients. Our clients were the door. The Federal Reserve payment infrastructure is the room. Halsey's jaw tightened. How soon? They have already pre-positioned access points. The first wave on Monday was reconnaissance dressed up as a robbery. The ransom video was theater. The second wave is the real attack. If they push it through, they can reroute or freeze every interbag settlement in the country for as long as they want. How long do we have? Ethan asked. Less than 30 hours. The room went silent. In the small bedroom down the hall, Noah was not asleep. The door had been left open a crack. He had heard the words cybercrime network. He had heard 30 hours. He had heard his mother's voice go quiet the way it had gone quiet on the night the soldiers came to the house in Virginia and told her about Daddy. He sat up in bed and hugged his knees. He thought about all the times Mom had stayed up late on her laptop. He thought about the bills she hid behind the toaster whenever he walked into the kitchen. He thought about the inhaler she always handed him with a smile, even though the one she kept for herself was always empty. A small tear ran down his cheek. "It is my fault," he whispered into the dark. "If she did not have me, she would not be in trouble." He pulled the blanket over his head and tried very hard not to cry out loud. Down the hallway, his mother was already typing. By 3:18 a.m. Thursday morning, Mia had narrowed the source of the malware's command signal to a single building. She pushed back from the workstation and rubbed her eyes. Halsey was on the phone. Ethan was standing behind her, holding a fresh cup of coffee that he had stopped drinking an hour ago. "Chicago," Mia said. "Your backup facility on the south side. Every encrypted callback from the second payload goes through it. Whoever is running this attack is using your own building as their relay station." Ethan stared at her. That building is not even staffed at full capacity. Sloan moved most of the operations out of there last spring. That is exactly why they picked it. Halsey finished her call and turned to them. "Wheels up in 40 minutes from Newark. The storm is hitting Chicago hard, but we have a window. A federal team is already on the ground." Mia stood up. She walked down the hallway and stopped at the door of the small bedroom where Noah was sleeping. The medic had given him cough medicine. His breathing was steady. He looked smaller in the white sheets than he did at home. She knelt next to the bed and brushed his hair back from his forehead. "I have to go for a little while, baby." He opened his eyes. He had not been sleeping after all. "Where?" "Just to fix something." "Are you coming back?" She held his small hand. "Yes, I am coming back, I promise." He looked at her for a long time. "It is not your fault, Mom." She froze. "What?" "I heard you talking. I know it is bad, but it is not your fault. It is mine." "Noah, if I was bigger, you would not have to work all the time." She pulled him into a tight hug. Her chest hurt. "You listen to me very carefully. None of this is your fault.
You are the reason I am still standing. Do you hear me? You are the reason I am still here." He nodded into her shoulder. She kissed the top of his head and stood up before she could change her mind.
The plane took off at 4:03 a.m. through heavy rain. By the time they landed at Midway, the rain had turned into snow. The wind off Lake Michigan was strong enough to push the SUV sideways at red lights. The Vale Guard backup facility sat on a long stretch of industrial road, surrounded by a chain-link fence and a row of leafless trees. From the outside, it looked like a dull warehouse. Inside, 3 levels stretched underground, 12,000 servers, a cooling system the size of a small parking lot. Federal agents had already secured the perimeter. The on-duty manager met them at the front entrance. His name tag read Garrison. He looked confused and afraid in equal measure. "Mr. Vale, sir, we were not informed of any visit. We are running a normal night shift. Who is in the building right now?" "Just 12 technicians. And Mr. Sloan." Ethan's head turned slowly. "Sloan is here?" "Yes, sir. He flew in last night. He said he was performing an executive review." Mia and Ethan exchanged one look. They moved. Mia took the central operations floor. Halsey and 4 agents took the lower server level. Ethan moved toward the executive suite on the east wing. Mia sat down at the master console. The screen lit up under her fingers. She pulled the activity log for the last 48 hours and scrolled through it slowly. Her breath caught. There it was. Row after row of high-level credential drops, all signed off with the same internal access key, all uploaded to an offshore IP cluster registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The shell company was named Stratus Holdings. She pulled the ownership records on a second screen. Stratus Holdings was registered to a single director, Richard A. Sloan. She picked up her radio. "He has been selling the keys to the building," she said, "for at least 6 months. He gave them the credentials. He gave them the routes. He gave them the timing." Ethan's voice came back through the speaker, sharp. "East Wing, now!" She ran. She found Ethan standing in the open doorway of an empty office. A leather coat had been left on the back of the chair. A laptop sat with its lid still warm. A half-finished glass of whiskey was sweating onto the desk. A side door at the back of the office stood half open. "He saw us coming in on the lobby cameras," Ethan said. They moved through the side door together. The corridor beyond ran along the edge of the building. The fluorescent lights blinked once, then again. Mia heard footsteps somewhere ahead, fast and uneven. "Loading dock," she said. "He is heading for the loading dock." They cut through a service corridor. The air got colder. They burst through a steel door and found themselves on a long concrete ramp lined with parked vans. Snow was blowing in through the open bay door. A figure in a dark overcoat was running toward a black sedan parked near the gate. He was carrying a small silver case under one arm. "Sloan!" Ethan shouted. "Stop!" Richard Sloan turned. He was 48 years old, silver hair, expensive shoes that were not built for ice. He was breathing hard. His face was red from the cold. "Ethan, do not be naive," he said. "This is so far above your understanding. You have no idea who you are dealing with. Put the case down." Sloan reached inside his coat with his free hand. 2 federal agents who had circled around through the loading dock came up behind him before he could pull anything out. He was on the ground in 3 seconds. The silver case slid across the concrete. Halsey picked it up. "Encrypted drives," she said. "Banking records, customer files." He was about to walk out the door with $2 billion in stolen data. Sloan was laughing into the cold concrete. "You think this is over," he said, his cheek pressed against the floor. You think arresting me changes anything? The package is already moving. Mia's stomach dropped. She turned and ran back into the building. She sprinted to the master console. Her fingers flew across the keys. A new message had appeared on her screen 90 seconds ago. A single line of text sent through a remote authorization protocol that only a senior Veilguard officer could trigger. Execute final stage. Phase 3. Live. The malware was no longer waiting. It was moving. Across every banking system Sloan had quietly seeded for the last 8 months. Mia stared at the screen. The federal agents in the room went silent. Outside, the snow was getting heavier. In 30 seconds, the second wave had begun. Friday morning came with broken machines. In Atlanta, a school bus driver tried to fill her tank at a gas station on Peachtree Street. Her debit card was declined. She tried a credit card. Declined. She tried cash from the ATM next door. The screen showed 2 words: System unavailable. In Dallas, a single mother of 3 stood in line at a Walmart pharmacy. The clerk apologized. Her insurance system was down. So was the register. So was the backup register. Her son needed his medicine before lunch. In Chicago, an elderly man at O'Hare Airport sat down on his suitcase and tried to call his daughter. His phone worked, but the airport was no longer accepting any form of payment. 3 flights had already been canceled because the fueling contractor's bank had stopped responding. The terminal was filling up with travelers who could not pay for food, water, or a hotel room. In New York, the Times Square ATMs were dark by 6:42 a.m. By 7:30, the line outside Chase on 42nd Street was 2 blocks long and growing. By 8 a.m., the President of the United States was on national television. My fellow Americans, our financial systems are under coordinated attack. I am asking you to remain calm. Federal agencies are working with the private sector at this moment to contain the situation. The country did not remain calm. By 9:15 a.m., trending hashtags on every social media platform carried the same word: Veilguard. In Washington, D.C., a temporary emergency operations center had been built inside a converted Treasury Department conference hall. 3 rows of workstations, 12 monitors on the front wall. Federal cybersecurity experts from 4 agencies, 2 private contractors, 1 small woman in a borrowed jacket sitting at the center workstation. Mia had not slept since Monday. Her eyes were rimmed in red. Her hands shook every time she lifted a coffee cup. The sweater she wore belonged to a federal agent who had handed it to her at 2 a.m. because the building was cold and she had stopped feeling her fingers. She was decrypting the final payload, layer by layer. Each layer was wrapped in a different mathematical lock. Some were old, some were new. Some were custom-built and signed with a digital fingerprint she had only seen once before, 10 years ago, in a classified threat report at Hayward Federal. She knew the architect. She had crossed paths with him in 2014. A Belarusian programmer who had sold his services to the highest bidder and disappeared into the dark web in 2016. The federal government had been looking for him ever since. He was running this operation. 2 seats away, Halsey was on the phone again. She ended the call and walked over. How long? I do not know. Mia. I do not know, Diane. Every layer he built has a self-destruct trigger inside it. If I push too hard on one, it kills the data on the other side. I have to take it apart from the inside without cracking the eggshell. The Treasury wants an estimate. Tell the Treasury I am working as fast as my brain can handle. Halsey nodded and walked away. Mia closed her eyes for a second. The screen blurred, her ears rang. She felt the room tilt slightly to the left. She gripped the edge of the desk and breathed through her nose.
Across the river, at the Capitol, Ethan Vale was sitting in a leather chair facing 14 members of a congressional emergency committee. The hearing room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters had been waiting on every step of the building since 6 in the morning. The committee chairman, a senator from California with white hair and tired eyes, leaned into his microphone.
Mr. Vale, do you accept responsibility for what is happening to this country today? A long silence stretched across the room. Ethan's lawyer leaned over and whispered something in his ear. Ethan listened. Then he gently moved the lawyer's hand away. He spoke into the microphone slowly. Senator, I do. The room shifted. I built a company that sold itself on the idea of protection. I hired people I never bothered to know. I rewarded the executives who cut corners because the numbers they brought me looked good on a screen. I praised men in expensive suits and ignored a woman in a corner of my office who filed 3 reports warning me that this exact attack was possible. He paused. I fired her on Monday morning in front of 12 people. I called her reckless. I called her incompetent. I had her marched out of the building by security. The room was silent. She has not slept in over 4 days. She is sitting in an operations center across this city right now, working alone on 3 cups of coffee and the worry that her 8-year-old son might not have a country to grow up in. She is the reason any part of our banking system is still alive this morning. She is the reason millions of Americans will have a payday next week instead of nothing. He looked directly at the cameras. Her name is Mia Carter. I want every person in this country to know it. The chairman did not interrupt. Ethan kept going. I did not just fail my company. I failed every person who works inside it. I built a culture where being exhausted was a badge of honor, where people who said no were called weak, where the only way to be noticed was to break yourself into pieces for a quarterly bonus. That ends today. Whatever happens to Veilguard after this hearing, that part ends today. He sat back in his chair. In the operations center across the river, the workstation next to Mia's was playing the hearing on a small muted screen. One of the federal analysts looked over at her. You should hear what he just said. Mia did not answer. Her head had dipped forward. Her hand was still resting on the keyboard. Her breathing had gone shallow. The analyst stood up fast. Medic! Halsey was already running across the floor. 2 paramedics came in through the side door. They lifted Mia gently out of her chair and laid her on the floor. Her pulse was fast. Her skin was pale. Sugar, one of the paramedics said. Get her something to eat, now. Mia opened her eyes slowly. She looked up at Halsey from the floor. I am not done, she whispered. You are done for 10 minutes. Diane. 10 minutes, then back to work. Mia closed her eyes again. On her screen, half decrypted, glowing in the dim light of the room, sat the next layer of the payload. Inside it, a hidden routing instruction had just become readable for the first time. It pointed at a small regional banking hub in Northern Virginia. By 1:30 p.m. Saturday, Mia was back at a keyboard, this time inside a black SUV speeding south on Interstate 95. She had eaten a granola bar, a hard-boiled egg, and a banana under the watchful eye of a federal medic. Her color had come back. Her hands were still shaking, but they were shaking less. Ethan sat next to her. He had come straight from the Capitol after the hearing ended. He had not changed his shirt. He had not eaten anything since the day before. Tell me what we are walking into, he said. A trap, but also our last shot. She turned the laptop toward him. The recovery triggers Sloan helped them seed are not all sitting in the big banking systems. Most of them are tucked inside small regional banking hubs that route payments for credit unions and county-level government accounts. There are 11 of them in Northern Virginia alone. Why there? Because nobody watches those systems. They handle volume, but not headlines. The hackers built their master server network to control the entire attack from those small relays. If I can break into the master node, I can shut the whole second wave down. If I break the wrong node first, every record they hold gets wiped permanently. How will you know which one is the master? Mia almost smiled. I am going to make him tell me. Make who tell you? The architect. The man who built this. He is sitting at a console somewhere in the world watching all 11 nodes right now. I am going to send a signal that only he will recognize, and I am going to make him answer. Ethan stared at her. That is insane. Yes. And if it works, he will reach out to defend his system. He will use the master node to do it. The moment he uses it, I will see the path back. And if it does not work? She did not answer. The convoy turned off the highway near Manassas and rolled to a stop in front of an old 4-story brick building. The sign on the front had been removed. The windows were taped over. A federal team was already on the roof installing a temporary satellite array. The building was an abandoned telecom hub from the 1990s. The federal government had purchased it 8 years ago for situations exactly like this. Inside, the floors smelled of old dust and motor oil. The third floor had been wired up for power that morning. 3 workstations, 6 monitors, a wall of fiber routes that fed directly into the Federal Reserve backbone. Mia took the center seat. Halsey, 2 federal cybersecurity directors, and a Treasury liaison watched from behind her. Ethan stood at her left shoulder. She typed for 40 minutes without stopping. She built a clean signature pattern that mimicked the architect's own coding style. She wrapped it inside a fake recovery message that looked like it was coming from one of his planted nodes. She sent it through 3 different relays, so the source would look like a member of his own crew calling for help. Then she pressed enter. For 90 seconds, nothing happened. The whole room held its breath. Then a single line of green text appeared at the bottom of her screen. Somebody had answered. Mia leaned in. Got you. She traced the response signal back through 6 layers of encryption, 4 false hops, and 1 mirror site in Riga. The path was crooked, but it was a path. At the end of it sat a single server, the master node. Mia's fingers were already moving. That was when the screen on the far left of the room flickered. A new browser window opened on its own. A photograph appeared. It was Mia. 11 years younger, wearing a black blazer, holding a folder, standing on the steps of a federal building in Arlington. Her old security clearance photo from Hayward Federal. A second photograph appeared next to it, her wedding day. A third one, Daniel in his army uniform. A fourth one, Noah at 3 years old, sitting on his father's shoulders. Then text scrolled across the bottom. We know who you are, Mia Carter. We know where your son is. Edison, New Jersey, room 7, South Wing. Stop typing, or he pays. Halsey was on her radio in 2 seconds, screaming for the safe house to confirm Noah's location and double the perimeter. Ethan's hand had already gripped the back of Mia's chair so hard his knuckles were white. Mia did not look up. Diane, is he safe? Confirming now. Hold on. The seconds stretched. Noah is fine. 2 extra units on the building. He is sleeping. Mia exhaled once. Slow. Then she went back to typing. The hackers tried to lock her out. She broke the lock. They tried to flood her connection. She rerouted. They pushed a kill switch toward the Federal Reserve trigger node. She caught it inside its second handshake and sent it back to its sender, wrapped inside a corrupted echo packet. The architect was now in a fight with someone who knew his own work better than he did. Across the world, in a small apartment, in a city he had never told his wife the name of, the architect leaned closer to his screen. He was sweating. His coffee had gone cold. He had not faced a real opponent in 7 years. He pushed harder. Mia pushed harder back. She watched his masternode light up on her screen. Every defense he triggered burned an extra second of his cover. Every counter she sent peeled a layer off his shielding. Sweat ran down the side of her face. The medic slipped a glucose tablet between her teeth without her even noticing. At 4:47 p.m., she found the seam. It was a tiny opening in the recovery handshake protocol. He had built it as a back door for himself in case his crew ever turned on him. He had never expected anyone else to find it. Mia slipped a small command through the seam. The master server's authority chain collapsed in on itself. Every regional node it controlled went dark in the same second. 11 small cities in Northern Virginia, 12 relay points across the country. The entire second wave of the attack lost its central voice in less than 2 seconds. The screens around the room turned green one by one. Mia sat back in her chair. She did not smile. She did not cheer. She just stared at the screen with her tired eyes and let one slow tear run down her cheek. Ethan put his hand gently on her shoulder. "You did it." "No," she said quietly. "We did." Behind them, Halsey was already on the phone with the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the White House at the same time. Outside the window, the winter sun was setting over the Virginia hills. For the first time in 5 days, the country was beginning to breathe again. 2 weeks later, on the first Saturday of February, the front page of every newspaper in New York carried the same photograph. It showed a woman standing at a podium in a blue blazer, her brown hair pulled back, her eyes calm in front of 50 cameras. The caption read, "Mia Carter testifies before National Cyber Oversight Committee." She did not look like an intern anymore. The financial systems had stabilized within 72 hours of the takedown in Virginia. The Federal Reserve had restored every payment route by Sunday morning. Banks had quietly reissued cards and refunded fraudulent transactions. ATMs were back online by Monday. By Tuesday, federal agencies on 3 continents moved together in coordinated raids. The architect was arrested in a small apartment outside of Limassol, with his shoes still on his feet. 6 members of his crew were picked up in Warsaw, Belgrade, and Singapore on the same night. The Belarusian government, after years of refusing to cooperate, allowed the extradition without comment. Richard Sloan walked into a federal courthouse in Manhattan on a Thursday morning and pleaded guilty on 21 counts. Securities fraud, wire fraud, aiding and abetting cybercrime, forgery of corporate signatures. He stood in front of the cameras and read the words his lawyers had drafted for him. "I betrayed my company. I betrayed my country. I betrayed my colleagues." The judge sentenced him to 19 years. Ethan Vale gave one more televised interview the following Friday. He did not bring his lawyers. He did not bring his communications team. He sat in a plain chair in a quiet studio across from a journalist who had spent 2 decades writing about Wall Street. "Tell me what changes," she said. "Everything changes, or nothing was worth it." He spoke for almost an hour. He did not hide behind any phrase. He named the executives he had ignored. He named the meetings where he had laughed off concerns about staff hours. He named the moment he had walked past Mia Carter's desk on the morning of the firing. At the end of the interview, the journalist asked him a final question. "What does Mia Carter want from Veilguard now?" Ethan smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. "She does not want money." The settlement Veilguard offered Mia by the end of that week was the largest in the company's history. It included a personal payout of $9.2 million, full benefits for life, a public apology, and a non-disclosure agreement that would have buried the entire story. Mia signed none of it. She had her lawyer send back a different list. She wanted mandatory wellness protections written into every ValeGuard contract, mandatory shift limits on cybersecurity teams, a standing rule that no on-call analyst could work alone for more than 12 hours without a senior backup. She wanted on-site childcare for every employee, paid for in full by the company, with priority for single parents. She wanted ethical security oversight at the executive level, with veto power over any infrastructure changes that touched federal systems. The first oversight officer would carry a clearance from Homeland Security and could not be fired by the board. And she wanted a seat in Washington, a leadership role inside a new joint cyber defense program connecting private firms to federal infrastructure protection. The salary would be paid by the federal government. She would not work for ValeGuard. She would only consult. Ethan signed every line within 48 hours. 2 senior board members resigned on the day the agreement was announced. The stock dropped 6% in the morning. By the close of the same day, it had recovered 4 points. By the end of the week, 3 other cybersecurity firms had announced they would be matching ValeGuard's wellness protections to compete for talent. A small column in the business section of one paper called it the Carter Standard. The name stuck. By the second weekend of February, snow had returned to the city. Noah was wearing a red knit hat that Mrs. Alvarez had made for him before Christmas. His mittens did not match. He was running across the snowy field at the edge of Sheep Meadow in Central Park, chasing a small black dog that belonged to a stranger. The dog's owner, an old woman in a fur-lined coat, watched from a bench and smiled. Mia sat on a bench at the far edge of the meadow with a cup of hot chocolate in her hands. She had bought it from a cart on the path because she could afford to buy hot chocolate from a cart again. The thought made her quietly happy in a way she did not yet fully trust. Her new apartment was a 2-bedroom on the Upper West Side. The radiator did not hiss. Noah had his own room. His new inhaler sat in a labeled drawer with 3 refills behind it. The medical bills were paid. The red envelopes were gone. She watched her son fall down in the snow and laugh. A shadow moved across the path in front of her. She did not look up. "Mind if I sit?" Ethan asked. "Sit." He lowered himself onto the bench. He was not wearing the long, expensive coat. He had on a plain, dark jacket and jeans. He had no security agent with him. He looked like a tired man who had been walking through the park alone. They sat in silence for a long minute. "I thought you would be in Washington this week," he said. "Took the weekend." "You earned it." "I earned about 400 weekends. I am taking them slowly." He laughed under his breath. They watched Noah throw a snowball at the small black dog. The dog caught it in the air. Noah's laugh carried across the field. "He looks happy," Ethan said. "He is figuring out how to be a kid again." "And you?" Mia thought about the question for a moment. "I am figuring out how to stop waiting for the next bad thing." "Is it working?" "Some days." Ethan nodded. He did not push. After another quiet minute, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white envelope. He set it on the bench between them. "What is this?" she asked. "Daniel's old unit. The Army contacted me last week. I asked if there was anything that could be done to honor him properly. They are putting his name on a memorial wall at Fort Belvoir. They want you and Noah at the ceremony in May." Mia looked at the envelope. She did not pick it up right away. A long silence stretched between them. "Thank you, Ethan." He nodded. He stood up. He brushed the snow off his jeans. "I will see you Monday in Washington." "Monday," she agreed. He walked away down the path. Mia watched her son chase the small black dog through the snow. For the first time in many years, she let herself believe that the next thing coming might actually be a good thing. She picked up the white envelope and held it gently in her gloved hands. The wind moved through the trees above her. She closed her eyes. She breathed.